Hey, folks, welcome back to the Peach Potted Podcast. Jason Pye, joined as always by Scott Turner and Buzz Brockway. Buzz coming live to us from Orlando. I guess not really live. This is recorded, but Buzz is currently in Orlando.
Yep.
And Scott somewhere in Cherokee County.
Holly Springs, baby.
And I am in Newton County. Despite what the AJC says, I am not a former Georgian. Anyway, it's good to see you.
Never going to let it go, are you?
Never going to let it go. Tamar Hollerman, if you're watching or listening, I'm never forgiving you for that. And for those of you who are watching this and don't know the backstory, a couple of years ago, Tamar wrote that that I was a former Georgian in an AJC story, which some of my colleagues, when I was at FreedomWorks, decided to print out many copies of that and hang them around the office. Because Tamar literally, at the time, we were in the hall of the States Building in Washington, D.C., and we were across the hall from Cox. And so I would see Tamar like going to the elevator for lunch or leaving the office for the day. And I was like, you could have just texted me or come across the hall and asked, anyway. We got a lot to talk about tonight. The first thing I want to mention before is make sure you download, like, subscribe, Apple Podcasts. And actually put us on Amazon Podcast just this couple of days ago. I haven't gotten a confirmation on that, but we should be there soon. Also YouTube, Facebook. Please check us out. Please share, subscribe, all the things. But before we dive into more political topics, I do want to note that this weekend is opening weekend, at least for our teams, of college football season. So Georgia's got Clemson, and I think Georgia Tech's playing St. Mary's School of the Blind and Deaf.
No, Northern Illinois.
St. Mary's School of the Blind and Deaf.
Is it really a St. Mary's School for the Blind and Deaf? Because I feel like you're crossing a line if that's a real place.
No, I remember like several years ago, like all the Tech fans who I'm friends with on Facebook getting really excited about their football season after they beat like a quadruple A school, Division III school by like 70 something to 3. And they're like, we're going to win the national championship.
No, that you're describing Georgia fans. That time, this is the 41st year in a row where they're half the Bulldog Nation is talking about this is our year. I mean, look, with the Senate race coming, we have to relive 1980 all over again. And so
here
we go.
National championship that came 40 something years ago.
41 years ago. So.
Oh, you kiss my ass.
Go Owls. I'm just going to say Kennesaw State Owls kick off tomorrow night.
Hey,
Hootie
Scott,
hoo.
This is the first year Scott's not going to call me and ask me if I want to go see a Georgia game.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Do not have those tickets any longer. That's right.
Sucks. So we are officially out of Afghanistan. Obviously, we've talked about this already. And sort of the frustration that kind of came with the way this withdrawal was handled. It seems to be a complete embarrassment. Also, there's been I haven't seen verification of whether these pictures have been confirmed or not, but obviously the picture of the Black Hawk helicopter with a person hanging from it was something that was pretty alarming, I think, to a lot of us.
So that turned out to
was it fake?
Well, it was a legitimate video, but not of what it was purported to be.
Okay.
It was not an execution, which would have been horrifying by itself, probably even more horrifying than the truth, which was that there were Taliban fighters who figured out how to fly a Black Hawk helicopter that we had left behind, and they were trying to post a flag, and the guy was actually harnessed from his chest, and it was a Taliban guy hanging from below the helicopter. So there was video of him waving to people on the ground, so he clearly was not.
Seen that.
Yeah, I mean I have mixed emotions about it, but the reality is that was a U.S. helicopter that was left behind, and should not have been left in that perfect of a condition.
Which I think is the thing that's pretty alarming when it's all said and done, is how much stuff we left behind in Afghanistan. And I saw a really good graphic about this the other day, and I retweeted it from, I forgot who had tweeted it out. And I was joking, but there's a hint of truth to what I said. Is basically the DoD's 1033 program, which is the program from which state and local law enforcement agencies get excess equipment from DoD, has basically been extended to the Taliban.
Yeah,
and
I saw a pretty good hot take about that. Actually, it said, "All I want is access to the weapons that I bought for the Taliban."
No, it's
Yeah.
a good, it's a fun. I think Michael Malice is the one who said that. I think I saw the same thing. But no, like, so this is the graphic I saw. It was from the Twitter account Disclose TV. The Taliban's new arsenal, and they're sourcing the GAO, the Government Accounting Office. I think they need Accountability Office. But 22,000 Humvee, 634 M1117s, 64,000 machine guns, 8,000 trucks, 162,000 radios, 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles,
Oh God,
358,000 assault rifles, 126,000 pistols, and 176 artillery pieces. And the thing is, 42,000 trucks and SUVs, 169 armored personnel carriers, 155 mine-proof vehicles.
the Taliban is having victory parades in our own military vehicles. It's crazy, man. I saw this really condescending piece on CNN by Don Lemon where he was calling out the GOP hypocrisy, and he doesn't get it that people in the GOP wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. It's the way that we did it, and we point to these specific things that you are ignoring. This is an epic failure by this administration. They should definitely be held accountable for this. They have armed our greatest enemy in the last 20 years. And it's all stuff that we gave them. We left it behind because he couldn't get organized in his exit plan.
People forget that the Taliban does not just want to control Afghanistan. That they could use this. They don't like Pakistan. They don't like India. They have greater territorial ambitions. And this now they have advanced weapons. And there are, back in the 80s, I don't know what they're called these days, but back in the 90s, rather, back in the year 2000, when we first invaded Afghanistan, we went and worked with the Northern Alliance, which was a group of people, of various entities who were various groups of Afghani people who were opposed to the Taliban. Opposition groups still exist. Now those folks can be absolutely crushed with our own weapons and then used to further the Taliban's aims in the region. Yep. So this is yet another example of how we're going to be paying for this for years and years.
And you mentioned the Northern Alliance. Back during the Afghan War with the Soviets, we were funding the Northern Alliance. We were funding all the Mujahideen, but we were also, Massoud was one of the people we were funding, Ahmed Massoud, and we funded him in his fight against the Taliban as well. And of course, he was killed. He was assassinated 2 days before 9/11, which was sort of a precursor to 9/11. Now his son is currently trying to rebuild the Northern Alliance. But like you said, Buzz, when they face the Taliban, they will be fighting the Taliban, a Taliban using our own American military weapons, which is incredibly frustrating. Now, and certainly Pakistan had been funded by or armed by Americans over the course of the last, back through Musharraf and others, and the Taliban hasn't exactly been friendly to us, specifically the ISI, who probably, at least there was some knowledge that bin Laden was in the country, but we keep constantly picking the wrong allies in the Middle East. And it's our foreign policy preferences seem to not, it's not that they make sense. Maybe. And look, Scott, you said like Republicans wanted out of Afghanistan. There are Republicans who want out of Afghanistan.
Well, Donald Trump started us down this path, as the president has pointed out many occasions.
Right.
And there was appetite for that within the Republican Party. That is without dispute.
I'm not disputing that.
Right.
What I'm saying is the loudest voices, so to speak, right now are not the voices who want us. Like McCarthy's criticism of Biden, other Republicans who are noted war hawks. They don't want us out of Afghanistan. They want us to stay there as long as possible. And this includes some people who are loosely friends of ours too. Like Eric Erickson, who's been critical of Biden because Eric's theoretical view is the forever war will come here if we're not over there. So, and I love Eric, but I disagree with Eric's take on that.
I think a lot of the response has been muddied by the fact that Biden has sort of set up this false dichotomy. What he keeps claiming is either we pulled out the manner in which he chose to pull out, or we have a forever war.
Right.
And there's a whole range of options in that in between those two poles that we could have done that would have not led to the situations that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, just the amount of equipment that we left behind, that is a clear sign, a clear indication that this was not well planned or thought out. He just rushed it for whatever stupid reason he had. Whatever the reason was, it wasn't justified by what it ended up happening. And plus, we have 250. And can we talk just a second about why people are worried about the dogs that could have potentially be left behind when we left human beings behind?
Yeah.
Like there are people who are all up in arms about, oh, there are dogs in cages in Afghanistan that we left behind. It's like, what about the human beings that we left behind? Where's the outrage for them? Why are you all fired up about some dogs? I mean, I'm a dog lover and I love my dogs. My dog's over there. I'd probably go to Afghanistan and get him, bring home. But we left human beings there. And I mean, that is the indication of a failed exit strategy.
The thing about the dogs, I think has been disproven because it's my understanding was they were,
but they had to have the people were, the point was,
the people were up in arms about it.
We're up in arms about it.
Right.
It's like,
that's true.
As if that was more important than the human beings that we left behind.
Right.
Because we actually did leave human beings behind. And people aren't posting about it. They're posting about, oh, the dog story's debunked. Like, who cares?
No, but the fact that here's the thing that I've been sort of wrestling with, because back during prior to the first, I think. So Democrats retake the House in January 2019. I ended up writing a paper with former Congressman Bob Barr, who you guys know was an impeachment manager during the Clinton impeachment. Yeah. We wrote a paper about impeachment in history and practice. It was a FreedomWorks Foundation publication. And my side of the paper was largely the past, how it had been utilized in the past, because through the Johnson impeachment and the Clinton impeachment, Bob filled in a lot of details in terms of like how it should be done or how it should be viewed now and what's proper and what's improper. There's one particular issue that I sort of wrestled with in the process of writing this paper, is that I don't believe a president should be impeached for policy differences.
Right.
So there's policy differences. Right. I disagree with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Therefore, he should be impeached. That is, in my opinion, improper.
Right.
Incompetence.
Yeah.
Is
where
right. Because if you go back and look
maladministration, I guess
maladministration is the proper, because I believe, if I recall correctly, Blackstone talked about, because a lot of what we base impeachment on is based on English common law and a lot of Blackstone's commentaries. And Blackstone talks about how maladministration is a proper use of impeachment. Yeah. And so you look at that and you're like, you might have a case. I don't know. I personally don't think impeachment is warranted, but that doesn't mean there's not a case for maladministration. Right. And the reason I say I don't think impeachment is warranted is because I don't know. I tend to agree that this happened so fast and so quickly that whether there were warning signs, take that to the side for a second. And intelligence assessments, things like that. Take that to the side for a second. This did happen very fast and very quick. Whether the administration now, if those briefings were credible, and because initially it was like 3 to 6 months or whatever it was. I don't remember. I think 3 months was what they were saying. 60 to 90 days. And then they kept reassessing and then said, oh, this is going to fall in 2 weeks. If nobody was paying attention to those warnings, that is maladministration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you make a great point, Jason. And I think our stupid political times, there have been already editorials saying, well, Republicans are trying to cheapen cheapen the whole impeachment process, when we just we impeached a guy twice for, now maybe you can debate the merits of that, but I mean, you impeached the president twice about that.
I think the first one I think was not warranted. Yeah. The second one,
the discussion by a lot of Democrats at the time was, well, impeachment is really whatever Congress decides it is. at a certain level is true because it is a political process.
That's right.
But no, I think you're right, Jason. And part of the problem here is is that yes, it did happen quickly, and we can criticize a lot of things that have happened, but the end result is not known. The end result of all of this is not known. There are still Americans there. Yes, that is dangerous, and that is, but I'm here at the State Policy Network conference in Orlando, a bunch of state-based think tanks, and Congressman Palmer from Alabama is here, and I happen to be talking with him, and I don't think this is off the records. I don't think he'd mind me sharing this, but he was telling us, a little group of us who were talking to him, about private entities all across the United States, mostly comprised of former military guys who served, men and women who served in Afghanistan, who are raising money on their own, organizing trips over to the region to try to rescue Americans who are there and Afghani folks who they worked with who are still there. So, yes, maladministration on the part of President Biden and his administration, but the American people, it seems, are stepping up to try to fill in the gap.
Yeah.
And I pray to the Lord that they are successful, and that the worst fears that I and many, and I'm sure all of us have, of just endless murders and killings doesn't come about, because these people are stepping up. Our brave men and women who veterans are stepping up, and the American people are stepping up to help fund these enterprises. We saw the story last week, I guess it was, of a group of retired folks, retired veterans, who just went over there and said, "This is what we're doing. We're going over this place to rescue these people," and they did it, and they were successful. I think we're going to hear a lot of those kinds of stories. There are private groups who are, there's a lot of concern in the Christian community about churches that were popped up in Afghanistan who are now, those folks are in danger. So there's efforts to try to get them out. So I think we're going to hear a lot of stories like that. And so back to the original point, the end result of this maladministration is not yet known. And so if the number of deaths is minimal and small, as tragic as they all are, does that rise to the level of impeachment? And would a Democratic-run Congress then want to impeach the president of their own party when we don't yet know the full outcome?
They're not going to. There's nothing that would be bad enough for them to take action on this. And I'm not sold that it's the appropriate thing to do. This was a policy decision. It led to people potentially dying. I'm sure we'll hear about those stories in the coming days, and we'll be praying for those Americans stuck over there who wanted to come home and couldn't, especially those with extended families who couldn't get their families out and were faced with a tough decision of either leaving their family behind or staying. What a false choice that is. And to say, if you're listening to this podcast right now, this is the question I want you to ponder. At what time in your lifetime has a president made a more grievous error that put more Americans in harm than this? That's the question that I want you to ponder. At what time during your lifetime, possibly in American history, but during your lifetime specifically, has an American president made decisions that put more Americans in harm than this guy right now?
So it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's this whole conversation. I think this is really fascinating. And I don't think, Scott's right. I don't think that there are not any Democrats who are going to vote, even if Republicans had the majority. They might impeach him. I think there are Republicans who might be resistant to impeaching Biden over this. I don't. So but even on the Senate side, there are no Democrats. Like, you need 67 votes to convict. You're not going to get that. And
if we were a year down the line, I could see the cabinet making a 26th Amendment type of play, but it's too early for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really weird situation, because I think at the end of the day, I think we talked about this last week. The polling says Americans by and large agree with withdrawal.
Yeah,
it's how it was done.
Yeah,
they have a problem with is how, and that's the thing, is like, because I always laugh a little when I hear politicians talk about what the American people want, It's just like, because it's the American people, like McCarthy can say all day long, talk about what the American people want. They want it out of Afghanistan. 20 years is too long.
Yeah.
It is time for us to get out. I tend to insist that what happened was always going, not necessarily like this, like everything, the totality of everything that happened,
right,
but the end result, the Taliban retaking control of the country, I think was always going to happen.
Well, but not with American arms,
Correct.
not with Americans still there. These are the things that we're upset about.
And I know, look, my Republican friends will get pissed off at, like, the Trump-loving Republican friends get pissed off at this, but the moment that Trump decided to negotiate American exit with the Taliban, you sealed Afghanistan's fate. So I'm not as pessimistic about it as you are, Jason. I think there could have been a scenario by which the Taliban didn't take over, but the moment you start negotiating with them and not negotiating with the government that we helped come to power, you've sealed Afghanistan's fate.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're gonna move on. Do you guys have any final words on this topic? Is it like I have a feeling that this topic is going to probably come up off and on for the next.
I'll just say to quote Emmett Terrell of the American Spectator, that the crisis continues, and that will continue. It will continue for a long time.
So you're right. And moving on to the next topic, Kelly Loeffler's Greater Georgia is in the midst of a red belt blitz because I ran late getting home today. Sorry, guys, for being late. I decided to go to Guitar Center. And
no shame in that.
I was fiddling around with a $3,000 guitar before I came to my senses and decided not to buy it. So I didn't get a chance to look into this one before when I got the agenda from you guys. So I will leave it to y'all to explain.
So Kelly Loeffler's Greater Georgia group, if you're not familiar, after Kelly Loeffler lost her senatorial election, she started a group focused on engaging in Republican races and also creating Republican-focused voter registration drives. And the Red Belt is basically the northern arc around the metro area in Atlanta, where we see heavy Republican turnout, Forsyth County, Cherokee County. She sent out a press release today indicating that this is where some of the areas where they're focusing, and then giving some examples. So she's going into heavily Republican areas and registering voters and spending her own money to do so. By the way, she's not fundraised a lot. I spoke with her Monday about some other things. She mentioned that she's self-funding this effort, and she's attempting to keep pace with Stacey Abrams' efforts around the blue side of voter registration. And thank God she's doing that, because we've already seen some fruits of her labor. The Devin Seaball race to replace Burt Reeves was the first one where she really was tested, and they are doing a pretty good job based upon that result.
Yeah, Buzz, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Jason. I hadn't seen it, but I applaud her efforts, because I think that's one thing that Republicans have kind of retreated, an area of the political battlefield that Republicans have retreated from, and that's it's more than just registering voters. Because when you go to talk to people and try to get them to register your vote, you're also talking to them about ideas and about political philosophy. And so carrying that message to a group of voters that Republicans may have ignored in the past is a great idea. And it's the only way that, if this state is going to become fully blue and instead of staying red or being purple, then center right groups are going to have to engage in this kind of activity. So I applaud former Senator Loeffler for doing this.
The question I have in terms of Greater Georgia, and I am not trying to make accusations here. I am simply wondering out loud, Scott, before you jump down my throat. Is this going to be the same populist nonsense that she was pushing when she was in the United States Senate, or is this going to be actually a friendlier version of conservatism that is grounded in actual real policy, like good conservative policy?
She's not talking policy. period, as the answer to your question. You know, so she's focused on voter turnout, get out the vote efforts, and voter registration. That's her primary focus in Greater Georgia. So there are no policy positions that they have taken. You know, what was alarming to her and to her team afterwards were the 339,000 Republicans who didn't turn out in the second election during the runoff. And where did those voters go? And so, you know, there are data analysts who are really well plugged in, who I've been speaking with, who are talking about, you know, for example, and I'm writing a blog post about this for Peach Pun. It'll be out probably early next week as I get all the data together, where about these 339,000 people, you know, where did they go and how do we get them back? And the truth is that when we start looking at the data, you know, 3 to 4% of them are coming back. And somebody's going to have to go talk to the other 95% of them and try to get them to re-engage. Otherwise, this state is not purple, it is blue.
Yeah.
And that's what her effort is. It's not around policy, it's around purely political. It's purely political. It's purely a machine to register new Republican voters who haven't been engaged, get them engaged, and then go and re-engage the ones who have left.
Okay. It makes sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it makes sense. It's hard to see. For me, it's really hard to see her getting new voters, attracting new voters to the party without actual policy positions, even if they're watered down to the point where it's like, well, we believe
that's not up to her, right? Her what she's trying to do is get the voters to come. It's up to the candidates themselves to make that message. And she can't run in every race, right? She can't be a House District 34's candidate. So she needs somebody there who can pick up that mantle and run with it. And then she's there with some resources to help them get elected. That's what it is.
I follow what you're saying. My point is if you're I guess what I'm saying is, like, if you are only backing specific candidates rather than specific principles, it's just, I don't know. I see how it makes sense, but I also don't. It's hard to explain. It's hard for me to explain, because I think that if your goal is to make the Republican Party more appealing, there has to be some core principles that you're trying to sell.
That's up to the candidates, is what I'm saying. I agree with you, but I don't think it's her role. I think.
But let me ask you this, Scott.
I think Buzz sees what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you can go. I mean, if you're Kelly Loeffler and Greater Georgia purports to be a center-right group that's going to try to help advance the Republican cause, then they're not just blindly registering voters, right? They're seeking out people who they think might be more agreeable to the Republican message, right? I mean, that's otherwise, then
yes, that's true. Look at the areas. That's what the Red Belt Blitz is about. It's about targeting Republican areas.
Yeah. So you come with a generic Republican. I think that's maybe what Jason's saying. If I'm hearing you right, Jason, there has to be some sort of generic Republican message. You know, do you believe in free markets, lower taxes, and limited government, etc. So if she sticks to that, if her message, if the Greater Georgia message is, do you believe the 2020 election was stolen, register to vote here, then that's not going to be a message that's going to help the Republican Party.
Well,
a crude way of describing what you're talking about?
I would disagree with that from a pure numbers standpoint.
You're saying it better than I was saying it. That's for damn
sure. If there are 339,000 people who left because they thought the election was stolen, go get them back. And that's the mission. And that's what it's going to take for somebody to stand there in front of them to say that. Somebody's going to say that to try to get them to come back.
I don't know that I believe, I mean, and I haven't seen the data, but I don't know that I believe that there were that many people who didn't show up because they believe the election was stolen. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I want to see the data, like proof, like show. I mean, it's just hard for me to believe there were that many. And I'm not saying you're wrong, or I'm not saying anybody's lying. I'm just saying that I don't.
No, I didn't say that there are 339,000 people who thought the election was stolen didn't show up. I said there were 339,000 Republicans who didn't show up. Yeah. And there is a difference.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like,
yeah.
So there's a
that's a real number. Yeah. I mean, you can look at that yourself really quickly and look up how many people voted Republican and how many people voted Republican the second time. Yeah, and the delta is 339,000.
like I said, I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying I don't believe you. I just haven't seen this myself. So that's all I'm saying.
Sure.
So just text it to me after we do the podcast, because I
for anybody that wants to go look at the Ballotpedia numbers, and this is what they are. Because again, I'm working on this as a
and then read Scott's post and share with all your friends on Peach.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, there were the Delta 2.289 million people voted the first time around for Warnock. 2.195 million voted for the second time, and then it drops down 339,000 from there the second time around. Yeah. So I mean that's it. I mean the numbers are straight off the Secretary of State's website.
So the challenge for Republicans, I mean, which is what circling back, which is what Greater Georgia is trying to address. How many of those people? I mean, you generally have a drop off between a general election and a runoff. There's always fewer people. So how many of them chose to do that because they threw up their hands and said, for a variety of reasons, I can't vote for a Republican and for either of these two Republicans anymore. And that's the danger part for the Republican Party. What was it? Because they, some of them will be doing that because Donald Trump told them the election was rigged, and those
or Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, and some of those people will be because I didn't like Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler stands for this, and I didn't like that. Or David Perdue did this, and I didn't like that. And those are, and it's a particular importance because, to Scott's original point, Brian Kemp wants to win, and if we start 300,000, if Brian Kemp starts with 300,000 people who have disappeared, thrown up their hands and said, "I'm not voting for a Republican," that's going to be incredibly difficult, whether he's facing Stacey Abrams or another Democrat, and right. Herschel Walker or Gary Black or whoever, Sadler or King, who becomes the nominee to challenge Warnock. They've got to have those votes, and so it's a particular challenge for the Republican Party, and at least Loeffler's out there trying to do something about it.
So right. you mentioned Herschel Walker, and
I'm sorry.
I am triggered. So Vernon Jones did something stupid, but I repeat myself. Vernon Jones is claiming that Herschel Walker has endorsed him for governor of Georgia.
Well, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's the photo of, he essentially, the story goes that Vernon sees Herschel having dinner with his wife at Chops, which is a swanky steakhouse in Buckhead. And he goes over and he says, "Hey, can we get a photo?" And Herschel, being Herschel, "Yeah, sure." And then the next day, the former state representative Vernon Jones says it's going to be a fight to take back Georgia. Who better ally than Herschel Walker, labeling him an ally. We're going to take it to the rhinos in 2022. And we're going to take down those liberals as well.
Oh my God. He's been a Republican for 2 minutes.
Welcome, and also
welcome, and like if there is a rhino, if there is a rhino, like I can't think of someone better than Vernon Jones. Like, come on.
It's the very definition of a rhino, a guy who's been there for 5 minutes.
And I used to use that term a lot, and God, I am so sorry for my past usage of it.
I prefer battle unicorn.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's so Greg Bluestein, our good friend Greg Bluestein of the AJC, clarified, no, that picture with Herschel Walker and Vernon Jones wasn't an endorsement. Hilariously, folks close to Walker says Jones, quote, ambush the Senate candidate at Chop Steakhouse, but Herschel also isn't backing his old pal Brian Kemp either. So,
which is smart politics 101. If you have a race that's contested yourself, you don't get in other contested races.
That's correct.
No.
I mean, it's so maybe Herschel's learned at least the first lesson of politics, and good for him for not engaging in other races. But that being said, Geez, I mean, it's just a faked endorsement is really what it is. He's claiming Herschel as an ally, and he didn't back down. He doubled down on Twitter today. He called the AJC the Atlanta Urinal and Constipation, in a tweet that follows up saying that, that they're afraid of two black men running through the Republican Party. And it was like, man, the classic Vernon Jones, right? Just, all piss and vinegar and anger and, over something that he did, right? It's like the ultimate gaslight situation. He did it, but he's going to make you feel bad for pointing out his error.
But he fights.
Yeah.
Vernon Jones, you are precious. You are precious.
Cuddles.
Oh, man.
Bless your heart.
Good times.
So I feel like I screwed up. Not screwed up. I feel like I stepped in a hornet's nest on Facebook a couple nights ago.
What'd you do?
I got pissed off. And
you got pissed off?
I got pissed off.
How high was the threshold?
I got pretty pissed off.
So I'm shocked. I can't believe it.
Let me read what I wrote real fast, and I'll have to go pull it up. But it was related to COVID-19 and pandemic woes. And this is what I wrote. According to the Georgia Department of Public Health, 4.4 million Georgians are fully vaccinated as of August 24th. Of those, more than 25,000 have tested positive for COVID-19, which is less than it's right at 0.5%. And 1,000 have been hospitalized for any reason not limited to COVID-19, which is 0.02%. And only 168 have died. 168 people have died. That's 0.0038%. I keep seeing posts about absolutely absurd ideas to mitigate symptoms of COVID. Some of them would be hilarious if so many people weren't falling victim to this utter nonsense. Literally, there are people promoting a horse dewormer, an actual horse dewormer. Oddly enough, the very people promoting these cockamamie ideas are overwhelmingly older, evangelical, and quote unquote conservative, whatever that term means these days. Going back to last year, 16,474 people in Georgia who have died from COVID-19 are over the age of 60. That's 84% of all confirmed COVID-19 deaths. Some of y'all are playing with your own lives. And look, I realize the world has seemingly been on fire since March of 2020, but have you lost your minds? Certainly not everyone can take the vaccine because of pre-existing conditions. Sure, I get that. But please don't become one of the people who could get vaccinated but doesn't, only to regret it later. I'm not telling you what to do, but I hope you'll get vaccinated if you aren't already. I was almost ratioed on this. I have 112 likes and 111 comments. And with people,
quick, let me write a comment real fast so you get ratioed.
Please don't. So basically, the point I'm trying to make is, and this was spurred, and I haven't said this, and this was spurred by a post the previous day from my mother, who said that she was taking the horse dewormer, whether I think it was the human version of it. So it's not the actual horse dewormer, but and saying that she was using it as a treatment for COVID. And sure enough, yesterday, she was diagnosed with COVID for the second time. Now, my mom is 68 years old. She has chronic bronchitis. And I'm very nervous about this situation.
Yeah.
Especially considering I lost my father 28 years ago next week.
Man.
So, and I'm a little angry because I feel that people who are there, people keep saying there are studies that show this works. No, the fuck they're not. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for using strong language, but there has been one peer-reviewed study, double-blind study, that shows that there are no significant benefits from using it. And there's a meta-analysis of 14 other studies that show there is no benefit to using it. At best, there is a placebo effect, which you believe that it works. And people, Georgia now is up to an all-time high in COVID hospitalizations as of last Friday. We are getting close to surpassing our peak for daily cases. And I have a feeling that September is going to be a very bad month in the state of Georgia. So the AJC has done an op-ed urging people to get vaccinated.
They wrote the op-ed above everything, above the headline, above everything on their paper. It was the very first thing you saw above the fold.
I commend the AJC for doing this. And the three of us are vaccinated. I've been vaccinated since April, going on 5 months now. I don't know how long Scott and Buzz have been vaccinated, but I think we all got vaccinated roughly the same time.
No, I waited.
You waited.
I got my second shot in April.
So, but you are vaccinated, correct, Scott?
Yes, I am fully vaccinated.
And I think there are people we mutually know who had either are dealing with serious cases of COVID. And I have just learned of people who, I mean, I don't know anyone directly who has died from COVID, but I know of people who have lost people from COVID.
Yeah.
And
I know someone who's died.
There are, for those of you who are promoting, I said this in a comment on my Facebook post, like this is getting personal to me. Because we all lived through 9/11 conspiracy theories. Obama was born in Kenya conspiracy theories, the birther conspiracy theories. We've obviously lived through most recently the conspiracy theory related to the 2020 presidential election. Yeah. A lot of this may not be the same, but it's coming from the same place. And I realize you think you're sticking it to the man by saying you're not going to get vaccinated. You hate Big Pharma. You hate whomever. You hate Joe Biden. He's promoting the vaccine. You hate the Atlanta Journal-Constitution because they're promoting the vaccine. You may feel edgy and cool and hip by saying these things, but you're a fool. If you can get vaccinated, get vaccinated. And if you're promoting these conspiracy theories, in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for Buzz and Scott, but in my opinion, you have blood on your hands. So I'll step off my soapbox and let Scott and Buzz talk.
Well, go ahead, Scott.
I would just look, man, I know it's personal to you and I can feel the pain in your voice as you speak.
Yeah.
And the concern for your mother, especially. Yeah. At the end of the day, the people who make these decisions are the ones who are responsible for it. And we can't blame others if I made the decision to use ivermectin as opposed to go and get my Pfizer shot, that's on me. That's my responsibility. That's a decision that I made, and that's the, and I know that's not helpful to you right now, but I don't think it helps anybody. I don't think it helps anybody to tell them they have blood on their hands. It's not motivating them to go get the shot.
I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. I think, and just a quick response to that, and I'll give you back the floor.
Sure.
I think in the political environment we're in right now, where we're skeptic, like I'm a skeptic, and you guys have known me long enough to know that I am fiercely independent.
Yeah.
True.
Well, yeah.
Fact check. True.
Point, Jay, I mean, you posted the the temporary little ring around your face on Facebook. I did too. I almost got ratioed for that, and it said I have a healthy distrust of authority, and I'm vaccinated, and that almost got me ratioed. So yeah,
I think I did get ratioed, and I didn't care because it was true.
Yeah.
My well, yeah, it is true. As I pointed out to someone, like they didn't make one that said I have utter attempt for authority, utter contempt for authority. Sorry, I can't talk today. Utter contempt for authority. My point is saying that was we're in a place right now where people are so distrustful of media because of what they see of unfair reporting on Donald Trump and so on, that they are turning to these alternative websites. And there's it's in what Kellyanne Conway would call alternative facts, and people, because it's that sort of confirmation bias type mindset where you don't trust the mainstream media, but you trust other conservatives. Therefore, you believe other conservatives. Therefore, and you don't believe they would lie to you.
That's it. You're hitting on what I want to finish on, which is, who do you trust? And the media, again, look at Don Lemon and his coverage of Afghanistan. He's become an apologist for the Biden administration. We're not going to look at Don Lemon and say we're going to listen to that guy, especially when he gets all condescending about how stupid we are. You just now, I think, damaged the cause, to be honest. And this is friendly conversation. Okay. I'm not trying to be in your face or mean, but when you say somebody has blood on their hands, that doesn't help get people to go get their shot. It just doesn't. We are part of the media because we're blogging. We're not trustworthy. Buzz and I were in the government. That makes us not trustworthy. And you have to go and find the people that you trust. It can't be somebody random on the internet. It has to go talk to your doctor and talk to them and let them tell you what's happening. Because here in Cherokee County, let me give you a fact. Cherokee County Northside Hospital is about full. 90% of their COVID patients are unvaccinated.
Yeah.
And that tells you that you have a better chance if you get the shot than if you go unvaccinated with this thing.
And that's true probably in every hospital in this country of the COVID patients. So.
And so we can't be preachy and tell people you need to go do this. The best we can do is say, look, we're holding myself up as an example. I don't have any extra appendages growing. I'm not picking up 5G. As far as I know, the only thing tracking me is my iPhone as I move around the world.
That's just because Bill Gates hadn't told you that yet. So.
Right. Yeah. I haven't gotten, or maybe
Just
I dreamt
kidding.
that it wasn't true because he programmed that in there. I don't know. Right. The reality of it is 164 million people have gotten this shot and there are no adverse effects long-term. There are some very minor stuff that happens here and there, but overall your survivability goes way up if you have it. And we can only show ourselves as examples of that and say, look, I did it and I'm safe and I'm nothing weird is happening. My personality hasn't changed. I'm still grumpy in the mornings until I've had my third cup. You know what I'm saying? So that's if we're going to appeal to people, what the AJC did was admirable in trying to say this is really the most important issue of our day, even though there's all this other stuff happening. But we have to ask people to go talk to their doctors and have a one-to-one conversation with somebody you can trust who's actually medically trained. Yeah. That's the way we're going to get people to get shots. We're not going to guilt them into it. It's just not going to happen.
No, I mean, look, I'm admittedly being a little emotional here, but at the same time, like I do believe that. And, if I'm harming the cause, if one person goes and gets vaccinated based on the words I said, that's to me a victory, but that's just my 2 cents. Buzz.
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of emotions about all of this because, as you guys know, 8-9 weeks ago now, I spent a week in the hospital with blood clots, DVT, deep vein thrombosis on my leg, and pulmonary embolism, small clots in both my lungs. And I asked my doctors a lot of questions, and I still do. I've since done reading on, and yeah, it's on the internet, but I'm seeking out, websites like Johns Hopkins University and places like that and reading lots of sources, trying to sort out what's reputable and what not reputable. And I know that, there are people on Facebook who have speculated that because I got the vaccine back in April, and there are studies that show that, and one of the doctors I talked about this with me, that when you get a vaccine, you slightly raise your risk of getting blood clots. When you drive in a car a long distance, which I did, you slightly raise your risk of getting clots. When you fly in an airplane, there's a greater risk of getting clots. I did all three of those things in a 6-week period. It's possible that the vaccine contributed to that. However, I don't regret. Maybe if I'd been better informed, I would have done things differently that might have helped prevent my clots. But I don't regret getting the vaccine because while the people who die from COVID is a small percentage, it's still a lot higher percentage than people who did the things that I did that may have contributed to me getting a blood clot. So, but all of that is aside. So I'm careful about how I approach all of this because of what I've gone through. But I think, there's a larger issue at play. I think I stumbled across a TV show the other night on the Vice network called The Dark Side of the 90s, and they were talking about conspiracy theories that existed in the 90s and weird cults that took place. And the Heaven's Gate people, which all committed suicide, and the before that the David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, who doomsday cult, who and their lives ended tragically with a lot of help from the government, by the way. But all of that was going on. There were conspiracy there. There's a long tradition of conspiracy theories in America and really across the world, but it's been amped up by social media. It's so easy to spread it. There's the internet has made any and every opinion available. And this is not to blame the social media. It's not social media's fault necessarily, but I guess my point is, you have all that happening. We have a decades-long trend in the United States of distrust in institutions, and institutions have broken trust with us, and that's been amplified during this pandemic. Dr. Fauci, quite frankly, has broken trust with the American people because he's just been all over the map with all sorts of information and
conflicting information.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know how we get out of this, and I don't know how it improves, but there's just, we're headed really down a dangerous path in all sorts of ways with distrust of institutions and how I think back to a book that Yuval Levin wrote maybe last year, maybe it's 2019. He calls it A Time to Build, where he talks about this. I guess it's pre-pandemic. It's probably the end of 2019 when he wrote this book. And if you listen to Yuval speak, he talks a lot about this. We've really got to devote a lot of time and effort in the United States to rebuilding our institutions. Yeah. Because, and now I think, how I think about this in relation to what we're all talking about here, it can be deadly. This lack of trust in an institution can be deadly. And Scott, you're right. People should go talk to their doctors. But guess what? Fewer and fewer people trust the opinion of their doctors when it comes to this, when it comes to their health. And that puts people in dangerous positions and costing people lives. So I don't know the answer to this, but I 100% agree with you all, Levin, that we have to rededicate ourselves. And I think as conservatives and people on the center right who, we believe in the value of institutions in creating a free and civil, valuable civil society, we have to have strong institutions in order for that to happen. We've got to rededicate ourselves to that cause of rebuilding these institutions so that they are trustworthy.
Right.
And so, I don't know what else to say other than that. And I got in trouble on that post that I referenced earlier, because at one point I said, listen, if 30% of adults are just going to flat out refuse to get vaccinated, then guess what? This virus is not going to go away and more people will die. Yeah. And I had some strong pushback from folks, but I admitted that I should have modified that statement by saying, understand people who got COVID have developed an immunity to it, which will help them. So maybe 30% is not the right number. It's fewer who are going to be continuing to spread this virus, but it's going to be a significant chunk of Americans who are going to be vulnerable to this. And that's going to linger on longer than it should.
The thing that got me, and we have a couple other topics, so I'm not going to harp on this much longer, but the thing that got me was the number of people who kept saying back, well, you're not talking about the human version of ivermectin. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm aware that the human form of this drug exists, but it doesn't change the fact that people are literally going to like feed stores or like, this has happened, and they're actually taking the horse version of this and digesting it. Poison control calls have gone up in Texas and Nevada because people are ODing on the animal version of ivermectin, which is highly concentrated, and it causes sickness and possibly even death. So if if the conspiracy, I call this conspiracy theory, this junk science, didn't you can't say ignore that and focus only on the human form when this other stuff is happening, because people are actually believing the shit you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much that. Scott, you got anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, I've said what I need to.
I love you, Scott.
Now we got to make a list of things that Jason loves. And
I'm on the list. That's amazing.
I mean, you are right now. Like, let's be clear. I didn't ask if you want to go get gay married or anything like that. So.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. So Stacey Abrams wants to be president when she grows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In an interview recently, in an interview recently, Stacey Abrams was asked about her future electoral plans. She said she hadn't made any decisions on what she wants to do next, only that she wants to run for president at some point in time. And from my perspective, you need some executive experience to be president. It's hard to jump from state representative. Even Obama was a senator before he became president. He was a senator between being a state senator and president. So it would be.
She runs a multi-million dollars. She runs an organization that's raised $100 million. So there's your executive experience.
That's executive experience, but she's playing to the margin. She's not playing to independent voters. It's a hell of a transition to go from messaging to progressive voters and progressive get out the vote efforts and trying to message more towards independence, which she has run for office before, but let's keep in mind she lost, close race, but she lost. So she's going to have to figure out how to moderate herself in a general election where she can be appealing more towards these independent voters who might not otherwise be attracted to the far left message that she sends. And jumping from being a state representative, the last time she actually governed a few years ago at this point in time, to being a nonprofit CEO to running for president seems like one hell of a jump.
Are you saying that maybe run for governor would be more appropriate for her then? Is that what you're getting at?
I am not advocating for such a thing, but I am saying that it would make sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out there on that limb saying she won't run, but
I'm on the fence on whether or not she runs, to be honest, based upon that, because I think you have a point that she would need to have a stronger foundation of public service to run from, other than just the nonprofit world that she's coming from. She is not the best candidate in the world as it stands today. And I don't think that she could beat Brian Kemp in a reelect if she does decide to run, for a whole host of reasons. I just think it's naked ambition that she is so blatantly saying, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to run for president of the United States. Even if I can't win in Georgia, I can take this nationwide. I've never seen anybody also openly campaign to be a vice presidential nominee like she did as well. I mean, this is a human being who I believe has tied her personal self-worth into whatever title she can obtain through the elective process. And that's kind of sad. And I think she needs our prayer, to be honest, that she could come to some sort of peace about her role in society. It's not like she hasn't done work to advance her own causes. She doesn't need to be president of the United States to have been an accomplished human being. She already has reached that threshold. But would it be interesting to see her run against somebody like Kamala Harris for the Democratic nominee and see them on stage debating? I would tune in for that because I'm a political junkie and I think it would be an interesting debate.
Yeah, that it would be. And I don't think there's a lot to harp on here. It's just an interesting comment, and it does raise more questions about her future, whether she's going to run for governor or not.
I will say this. I think it kind of ties whether she runs, if she doesn't run for governor and then does run for president, which she might, that's an option laid out before her. I think it points to what I was saying earlier about the weakness of institutions. The institution, you look, for example, at George Bush may not have been the greatest. George H.W. Bush might not have been the best president that we had, but he was perhaps the most accomplished person, as he had a long resume and those used to be the kinds of people that we considered for president of the United States, people who had demonstrated leadership skills in a wide variety of formats. And now we're to the point of, where Donald Trump ran and won. And sure, he was a businessman. He had some executive experience, but most of his fame came from being a reality TV star where he played a businessman. And, the fact that, that The Rock, as much as he's a fun dude and makes great movies, et cetera, the fact that when that The Rock throws out that, gee, I'd love to be president, maybe I'll run, and he's not laughed off the stage for that. I think it shows you where we are.
I mean, Matthew McConaughey is another good example because he's considering a run against Greg Abbott. Matthew McConaughey, I mean, for everybody, by all accounts, a wonderful person, but should not be an elected official.
I'll throw one out for you. How about a Heisman Trophy winning, national championship winning running back for the University of Georgia running for the United States Senate?
Exactly.
And Buzz, your point about George H.W. Bush. I mean, I actually had to pull up his resume here, but I mean, he was a member of the House of Representatives, served 2 terms, 10th ambassador to the United Nations, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, liaison, U.S. liaison office to the People's Republic of China, 11th director of Central Intelligence, 43rd vice president, and 41st president of the United States. That's a hell of a resume. But here's the thing: the difference between someone like George H.W. Bush, and a Donald Trump is George H.W. Bush had developed a reputation as a statesman.
Yeah. And
we frown upon statesmen in today's political environments. They do. A statesman is a negative. Public service is frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
And look, public service doesn't mean everything. Joe Biden was a senator for decades.
Experience is not always. Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden has a long history in government, and he's turning out to be, Mr. Maladministration.
Right. Yes, yeah. another nail in the coffin of faith in institutions in America.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, Buzz, like you're what you said about Fauci was absolutely right, and I don't know. I don't want to go back down that rabbit because I had a thought.
It reminds me of that phrase, that great line from Animal House. That our fraternity has a long history of existence to its members. And that's what we're seeing here. These people have, the kinds of folks that are rising to the top just have a long history of existence. They don't accumulate the skills, and they don't operate within the institution of government with the purpose of doing the job of the government. And
you're
proper job.
You're talking. This is ultimately my argument against term limits, and is that there's that sort of muscle memory that comes out. I don't think serving in public office for 20 years is in and of itself necessarily a bad thing. It's how you spend that 20 years. But that, one of the reasons I think we have so many problems, and I don't want to go completely revisit this topic because we closed out that topic 15 minutes ago, and we have one more topic to get to before we call it a night.
There's a theme running through this podcast,
and I have another podcast to record tonight too. So, but the reason we from my view, the reason we have so many problems in today's politics, the reason people are losing trust in institutions, the reasons is, first of all, we look down upon people who have served in public office for some time. Sure, certainly. Someone who, I think John Dingell served in the House of Representatives for something like 40 or 50 years. That is ridiculously and absurdly long time. So maybe we do term limits for someone, who maybe 20 years is the cutoff, maybe 30 years is the cutoff. I don't know, but I don't think serving from if you're a member of the House of Representatives, the 8-year proposal that I've seen, which is effectively 4 terms, or 10-year proposal, which would be 5 terms. I don't like those things because it takes away so much institutional memory, and it leads to there's this proclivity lately of more and more grifters getting elected to Congress who don't care about the institution. They care about raising money and spending that money when they leave Congress, and or building their
it's a gig to build your
right,
to build your social media profile so that you can get a book deal or get a TV talk show.
It's part of your, it becomes part of your brand, basically.
Yeah. And look, term limits, and I have supported term limits, but it's a reaction to frustration, to that breakdown in the institution. We have so many grifters and hangers on and people who don't do the job, and it's increasingly difficult to unseat an incumbent. So what do? It becomes a reaction to the erosion of the institutions. That's really what term limits are.
Yeah. Scott, I'm gonna give you the final word here because I want to get to our last subject.
What I'm hearing is that you're not opposed to term limits, just the number of years that it would be required by it. And here's as somebody who term limited themselves, who believes in term limits so wholeheartedly that I cut my own public service off when I reached those 4 terms. I can tell you it had a lot of benefits for me. And the number one thing is the sense of urgency that it creates when you know there's an end coming, regardless of whether you pick it or not. That you have to work, you have to start solving these problems right away. There is no next year at a certain point in time. You have to fix these problems now. And it also frees you up to call out things within your own party when there's shenanigans, which I did on a regular basis. And that, I think, is part of what we need. We need that sense of urgency. We're not just here to run out the clock. We're not just here to be here, just to exist for our membership. We're here to do something, and we have a limited amount of time. So with that sense of urgency to fix the problems, to tackle the problems exists, and it never goes away from the first day you're in office to the last. And that benefit, it overrides for me anything else that's a criticism of term limits, because I lived through it and I saw it. I know how it changed my own personal behavior, and I would say that it's a good thing. So that's all I'm going to say about it.
I was going to I had one more thing to say, but I'm going to pass in keeping to give you the final word, but it's you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So last thing here, former Cherokee County Sheriff Roger Garrison has resigned from the Judicial Qualifications Committee because, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a decades old photo of him wearing a Ku Klux Klan robe and hood has resurfaced. Garrison was appointed to the JQC on August 19th by House Speaker David Ralston. And this is from the Atlanta Journal report. On Thursday, when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution asked Ralston Ralston's office if the speaker was aware of the past photo, the spokesman for Ralston did not answer the question. The quote from the spokesman was, "Sheriff Garrison has resigned from JQC. The speaker will appoint a replacement as soon as practical." Guys, that's bad.
Well, I think, and I'll defend the speaker here for a second, because Representative Tommy Benton has made he's a lost causer. He has made various statements, and Speaker Ralston has moved quickly to remove him from leadership authority. So I can't,
before giving him his leadership authority back.
That's
eventually.
True. That's true. But I can't imagine that the Speaker's office had any knowledge of this before that moment. So
I knew about it, and I'll tell you why. Because when he ran for re-election in 2012, it became an election issue in Cherokee County, and it came out, and that he, in 2012 we didn't have the
should have known. Maybe the Speaker's office perhaps should have known, but did they know? And I can't imagine the Speaker would appoint him if he knew that. But anyway, that's just my thought. Yeah,
I think there is a world in which, he got reelected when it was already public knowledge, so maybe it's blown over. It might have been part of the, that's speculation on my part. I don't have any knowledge. I haven't talked to Caleb about it. And so I could give them the benefit of the doubt there that maybe there's a certain percent chance that they didn't know, but the reaction in not acknowledging the question is sort of telling. This goes to the heart of cancel culture here. It was something that happened 20 years ago, and I'm not defending it at all, right? Or more than 20 years ago. He attended a Halloween costume along with one of his buddies, and they tried to reenact the scene from Blazing Saddles, which is a movie that could not be made today by all accounts.
It's a movie that mocks the use of the N-word, which was prevalent at that time, which mocks the Klan, because the Klansman in the movie had a smiley face on the back that said, "Have a nice day." I mean, it makes them look like fools.
Right. And that was what the sheriff was trying to do. I will tell you that, the sheriff and I do not have the best of relationships. When I brought civil asset forfeiture reform back to Georgia, he sent an email from his official sheriff's email account to my State House account threatening to crush the bill. Wink, wink. One of the reasons why I drive around now with a dash cam in my car was a result of that particular email. And other representatives also have dash cams in their car as a result of that particular email. So he has been in the news before for this very thing. And so it's surprising to me that it wasn't known, if in fact it wasn't. But I think it's more, it's an example of cancel culture in one way, but it's also appropriate that he stepped down from this very important position and allow somebody else to take the reins.
I agree that it's appropriate for him to step down, but it also highlights a double standard because of his name escapes me, but the governor of Virginia,
Ralph Northam.
Northam. Yeah. I mean, who the picture surfaced of him in blackface.
Yeah.
And it was quite the scandal. There were calls for him to resign. He never did. And he will complete his 5-year term later this year. So, I mean, there is that double standard that's out there, and it's problematic. And I mean, I think there are people in culture who do need to be canceled, people who act abusively or inappropriately towards others. But at the same time, I do think context is important. I don't think that like I said, in this particular instance, I do think he needed to resign. But context is always important.
Yep.
So, but in cancel culture, nobody cares about context.
Now, if we get a fundraising email from him saying they tried to cancel me, but I'm, that would be in keeping with the political times where he uses this as a platform to run for United States Senate or something. I mean, why the heck not?
All I'll say
and he'll hold rallies saying, "Stop the cancel culture. They tried to cancel me."
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, unfortunately.
Scott's not angry at all.
Never met him, so I'll trust your judgment, Scott.
Thanks for everybody who joined us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepeachpundit. Thanks for watching on there. Because we're broadcasting there, I don't feel compelled to actually post the final product. So that saves me some time later tonight. So, but feel free to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Amazon Podcasts, whenever the hell that becomes active. Check us out on YouTube. Keep visiting peachpundit.com. It's been kind of we're coming out of August. Things are a little slow. Things are going to start picking up a little bit towards the end of the year. So expect more content. But until next week, peace out.
Peace out.